all the kingdoms of the world, Jesus immediately turns and tells the enemy that you are to worship the Lord thy God and him alone. And Jesus instantly defeats this enemy at the beginning state, watch this, of his ministry. But this test is a different test. This is a different test at a different season of his life. In the beginning seasons, the tests that he had were simple tests. And if you are honest, you understand as you continue to get older, in the process of time, testing changes. You're not going to fight the same battles that you fought when you were in high school. You're not going to fight the same battles that you fought when you were in middle school. As you continue to live and you move into a different season of your life, the tests increase. And Jesus is at a place of being tested. His disciples he could not bring to this place because they exalted Jesus and they saw that Jesus could heal the sick and raise the dead. They saw Jesus walk on water. They saw Jesus heal the man that was blind. They saw Jesus call Lazarus back from the grave. And they saw that all the great miracles that Jesus did. And they knew that he had been the Son of God because no regular man could do the miracles that he did. And at this point, Jesus is at a place where he then has to tell the disciples, you can't come any further. Because if you come further, the reality and the truth of how the power of the kingdom is revealed will be so detrimental to you that you can only see me at a certain position, because if you come a little closer, you'll see truth that may shock you. Jesus tells majority of his disciples to stay except 3 of the disciples, and I want you to follow me. I want you to hear. He tells Peter, somebody say Peter. Peter. And he tells James, somebody say James. And he tells John, somebody say John, to come. The majority of the disciples had to stay afar off because they wasn't prepared to see truth. He then calls 3 of the disciples to come further than the other disciples. It is for a reason. As I begin to study these 3 disciples, I asked myself what was so significant about these disciples that isolated them from the other disciples, and I begin to understand why. In the book of Mark, we see that James and John is surnamed, or their name is translated as the son of Zebedee, and their name is the sons of thunder. And then I begin to understand Peter. Why would he then tell Peter to come? And then I begin to think about all the situations that Peter had encountered with Jesus. And I remember that Peter was the one when the storm began to rage upon the sea. And they were on the boat, and the wind began to be contrary and shake the boat and toss the boat to and fro. It was Peter who came up out of the boat in the midst of the storm and came unto Jesus in the midst of the storm. And I realized what was significant about these 3. These 3 knew what it was like to be in a storm. Jesus wanted to bring someone close to him that could relate to him in the situation that he was passing through. Because the reality is, when you face some things, I'm talking about those grievous things, the things that makes you can't sleep at night, the things that make your appetite fall, those things that you're worried about all through the day and all through the night. And when you go through those types of things, you stretch out to reach for somebody that can relate to you. And the only 3 that could relate to Jesus was the 2 sons of thunder. And Peter, the storm man that walked on top of the water. They come further to support Jesus at this trying time of his life. But Jesus turns aside to see that the very ones that he thought that he could relate to, the very ones he thought that he can express truth of how it is to go through a horrendous trial, the very ones he thought could handle the truth of seeing him be wounded and shaken by something, and wouldn't judge him based upon the thing that he endured or encountered, the very ones that he thought could relate to him, he turns aside and sees the sons of thunder and the water walker, Peter, who walked in the storm, sleep. They were asleep because the reality is when you go through certain trials and you go through certain dilemmas and we stretch out to try to see support from people, at the end of the day, even though you can speak to someone that possibly can relate to the trial that you're going through, they're not in the trial. Their heart is not in the trial. They have no passion in the thing that you're enduring. They understand, but they can't feel the same pain that's in your heart. So the three disciples that could possibly relate to Jesus are asleep. Jesus is at the point now where he has no one to relate to. Jesus is at the point now when all of his resources of people that he could try to embrace or encounter or speak to were all left and was all asleep. He then is left alone to talk to his Father. And I just like to thank the Lord for giving us an opportunity to talk to our Father. Because it's one thing that I do understand, that when you talk to the Lord, not only is he able to hear what it is that I'm passing through. The Bible calls God the wonderful counselor. The reason why he is the wonderful counselor is because God sits above everything, and everything that you're passing through, he can see every side of it. He can see every angle of it, because see, people can only get us one side of the thing that you're passing through. There are certain things that they won't be able to see because they only know the side that they have been exposed to. They can't see the whole truth, but God sees every angle of the situation. He sees every aspect of the situation. He sees every angle and every place around the thing that you're going through, because he is the wonderful counselor. He goes to the Father. It is interesting, at this point, at this prime time, Jesus does not go to the scribes. He does not go to the Pharisees to try to convince them of what it is that is taking place in his life. He did not go to the scribes or Pharisees to speak to them to try to justify the situation that he's in. He did not go to those people that were coming up against him to just explain or express to them the reality of what it is that is going on. He just speaks. 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 He just speaks to his Father. He looks up. He speaks. Because Jesus is at a place of having conflict. Oh, the water walker, the devil rebuker, the storm chaser, the one that healed all manners of sickness, is in a conflict. He has